Blood is thicker than water. But nobody told the teachers at Manhattan's most fancy school that you should never hurt a billionaire's adopted daughter. They called her a charity case. They made her cry. Tonight they learned that her quiet, scary, powerful father is not just rich. He is hungry. Manhattan's St. Jude's Preparatory Academy was like a big castle full of new money and old secrets. It was a school that was just as rich and stuck up as famous places like Phillips Exeter or the Dalton School. The tuition cost more money than most people see in a lifetime. 16-year-olds drove shiny custom Porsches to class. Parents bought whole library wings just so their kids could get into top colleges. In this shiny snake pit of wealth, family name and money were everything. Lily Covington had none of it. Lily was 16 years old. She had quiet brown eyes and a gentle way of moving. She was like a soft little lamb walking among hungry wolves. Everyone at St. Jude's knew her story, or at least the cleaned-up version people whispered about. 10 years ago, the reclusive billionaire Alistair Covington, who ran a huge worldwide shipping company, had adopted her from a broken-down orphanage in Eastern Europe. For a little while, the PTA mothers thought it was a beautiful, kind thing. They swooned over the idea of a rich man saving a poor child. But the years went by, and Alistair never once came to a charity party, a parent-teacher meeting, or a spring auction. The whispers turned mean. People decided Alistair was ashamed of her. They decided she was some kind of mistake, a burden he paid money to keep hidden. The teachers, who needed the rich parents' bribes and donations to keep their jobs, followed the parents' lead. If the important ladies of the Upper East Side hated Lily, then the teachers would make her school life a living hell. Headmistress Victoria Gable was the boss of all this meanness. Her face was pulled tight by expensive surgeries. She ruled St. Jude's. Jude's with an iron hand and a heart as cold as dry ice. She hated Lily because the money for Lily's tuition came by automatic bank transfer from Covington Enterprises. Alistair never sent a personal bonus or sponsored a fancy gala. That made Gable furious. Then there was Richard Harrison, the advanced placement history teacher. Harrison was a bitter, proud man. He loved nothing more than crushing the spirits of students who did not have powerful fathers to protect them. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, he slammed a graded essay down on Lily's desk. The red ink across the top screamed a failing grade. "Another terrible try, Miss Covington," Harrison sneered. "It looks like all the private tutoring money in the world cannot buy a real brain. Maybe you should ask your father for a brain transplant. Oh, wait, he doesn't even answer your calls, does he?" The whole class burst into mean laughter. Lily swallowed hard. Her face burned. Her eyes stayed glued to her desk. She did not cry. She had learned long ago never to give them that satisfaction. "Mr. Harrison, that is completely wrong," a clear voice said from the doorway. Clara Jenkins, the new advanced placement literature teacher, stood there with her arms crossed. She was 28 years old. She was a breath of fresh air in the heavy, stuck-up halls of St. Jude's. She did not wear fancy Prada clothes. She wore simple cardigans. She actually cared about teaching, and most dangerous of all, she had a strong, protective feeling for Lily Covington. Harrison rolled his eyes and straightened his expensive tie. "Miss Jenkins, I am simply preparing the girl for the real world, a world where she cannot coast on a billionaire's pity." Clara stepped all the way into the room. Her amber eyes flashed with anger. "You are humiliating a student just to make yourself feel big." Lily's essay on the French Revolution was brilliant. I proofread it myself. If you gave her a failing grade, it is because of spite, not because of real school standards. The room went dead silent. Nobody ever spoke to Harrison like that. "My office, both of you." A cold, sharp voice came from the hallway. Headmistress Gable had been walking past. Her high heels clicked hard against the marble floors. 10 minutes later, the doors of the headmistress's fancy office slammed shut. Lily sat trembling in a big leather chair. Clara stood firmly beside her, one protective hand resting on the teenager's shoulder. "This disrespect ends today," Gable hissed, glaring at Clara. "You have been a thorn in my side since September, Clara. This academy runs on a delicate social ladder. We cater to the rich. We do not coddle charity cases." "She is a student," Clara fired back, her heart pounding. "You are bullying a child because her father does not come to your cocktail parties." Gable's eyes narrowed into thin, angry slits. "Watch your tone. In fact, let's make this a teaching moment." She turned her mean gaze to Lily. "Mr. Harrison found the master answer key to the upcoming midterms missing from his desk this morning, and a quick search of Miss Covington's locker showed it buried under her gym clothes." Lily's head snapped up. Tears finally spilled over her lashes. "No, I didn't take anything." "Liar," Harrison barked, leaning against the mahogany bookshelf. "I knew you were struggling, but theft, that is grounds for immediate expulsion." "You planted it," Clara shouted, stepping in front of Lily. "You're failing her on purpose. And now you're framing her because you need someone to blame for the cheating scandal with the mayor's son." Gable slammed her hands on the desk. "Enough, Clara. You are suspended without pay while we review your bad behavior. And you, Miss Covington, are suspended for a long time. Tonight is the annual PTA Gala. Your father will be told that if he does not appear in person to talk about your expulsion, your things will be mailed to whatever big house he hides in." "He's traveling," Lily choked out, panicking. Her father was not just a company boss. He was the vampire king of the Eastern Seaboard. He slept during the day and handled the hard politics of the supernatural world at night. He could not simply walk into a PTA meeting. "Please just let me take a 0. Don't call him." "Oh, we are not calling him." Gable smiled in a mean way. "We are locking you in the library until the gala starts tonight. You will sit on the stage, and we will make an example of you in front of the board. Take her away, Richard." Harrison grabbed Lily's arm and pulled her roughly from the chair. Clara tried to step in, but Gable blocked her path. "Pack your desk, Miss Jenkins. You're finished here." Lily was shoved into the dusty, unused archives of the St. Jude's library. The heavy oak doors were locked from the outside. Alone in the dim light, shivering from the damp cold, Lily finally broke. She pulled her cell phone from her blazer pocket. Her fingers shook as she dialed the only number she knew by heart. Deep under the financial district of Manhattan, in a soundproof underground boardroom lined with black marble, Alistair Covington sat at the head of a huge black table. Alistair did not look like a man in his late 40s, even though his fake birth certificate said he was. He had the terrifying, timeless beauty of a top predator. His jaw looked carved from stone. His eyes were a bright, glowing silver. His perfect charcoal suit hung perfectly over a body built for deadly fights. He had ruled the vampire groups of North America for 500 years. He commanded armies of the undead, controlled billions in human money, and had toppled whole empires. Right now, he was listening to a vampire leader from Chicago complain about territory lines. Alistair was extremely bored. Suddenly, a soft buzzing came from the breast pocket of his suit. The whole boardroom of ancient vampires froze. Nobody, absolutely nobody, interrupted the king during a meeting. Alistair slowly took out the phone. Only one person had this private number. His silver eyes narrowed as he looked at the screen. He held up one pale finger, stopping the Chicago vampire in the middle of the sentence. Alistair pressed the phone to his ear. "Lily, my little bird, are you all right? You're supposed to be in your last class." On the other end of the line, a muffled, heartbreaking sob came through. "Papa." In a fraction of a second, the temperature in the underground boardroom dropped hard. Frost literally started to form on the rims of the crystal water glasses on the table. The ancient vampires shifted nervously. Their animal instincts screamed at them to run. The king's presence had changed from bored rich man to pure monstrous anger. "Who?" Alistair said. his voice a low terrifying rumble that shook the floorboards. "Made you cry." Lily poured out the whole story. The bullying, the failing grades, the planted answer key. Headmistress Gable, and Clara Jenkins, the only teacher who had tried to save her, and who had just lost her job for doing so. "They locked me in the library," Lily wept. "They said I have to sit on the stage tonight at the PTA Gala so they can embarrass me in front of the board. They said you're a coward who doesn't care about me." Alistair closed his eyes. The huge, blinding rage that filled him was completely new. For 500 years his heart had barely beaten, cold and dead in his chest. But when he found that tiny, abandoned human baby in a snowstorm 10 years ago, something inside him had changed. Lily was his link to being human. She was his whole world. "Listen to me carefully, my sweet girl," Alistair said, his voice instantly soft, even though the frost on the table kept spreading. "Dry your tears. Do not let them see you break. I will be there." "But Papa, the sun." "The sun has set, Lily, and I am very, very hungry." Alistair hung up the phone. He stood, towering over the vampire leaders. "This meeting is over. If anyone speaks to me before tomorrow evening, I will separate their head from their spine." In a blur of unnatural speed, the Vampire King vanished from the room. By 8 o'clock that night, the St. Jude's Grand Auditorium was a show of too much wealth. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over round tables covered in silk. Waiters walked around with silver trays of champagne and caviar. The parents, dressed in thousands of dollars of fancy clothes, mixed and laughed. They had no idea of the storm that was coming. At the front of the room, on the big stage, Headmistress Gable stood at a mahogany podium. Behind her, sitting alone on a plain wooden stool, was Lily. The teenager looked pale and tired. She stared down at her lap, while the whole room of rich people whispered and pointed. Clara Jenkins stood at the very back of the auditorium, near the exit doors. She had refused to leave the building. She could not abandon Lily, even if it meant security would drag her out. Her heart hurt for the girl. She gripped her purse tightly, wishing she had the power to stop this cruel show. "Ladies and gentlemen, important members of the board," Gable spoke into the microphone, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "St. Jude's is a place of excellence. We demand perfection, honesty, and honor. Unfortunately, not every student belongs in our special halls. Some are simply charity cases with no moral strength." Harrison stood near the front row, smirking openly and sipping his champagne. "Tonight we talk about the expulsion of Lily Covington," Gable continued, waving dismissively behind her. "A girl who turned to theft because she lacked the brain power to succeed. A girl whose own father could not even be bothered to show up to defend her." The words had barely left her mouth when the temperature in the auditorium suddenly dropped by 20 degrees. Women in backless evening dresses gasped and shivered hard. The crystal chandeliers flickered wildly. The bulbs buzzed like angry insects. The waiters froze. A sudden animal fear washed over the entire room. It was the natural response of prey sensing a top predator. Clara shivered. Her breath made a small cloud in the suddenly freezing air. She turned her head. Boom! The heavy 12-foot-tall mahogany double doors at the back of the auditorium were blown open with such violent force that their hinges snapped. The doors crashed into the drywall, splintering the expensive wood. The entire gala screamed in shock and spun around. Standing in the doorway, framed by the shadows of the hallway, was Alistair Covington. He glided. Every step he took toward the stage was completely silent, even though he wore heavy leather Oxford shoes. He wore a custom midnight black suit that seemed to drink the light around him. His silver eyes swept over the terrified crowd. Wherever his gaze landed, billionaires and socialites instinctively flinched and stepped back to clear a path. He gave off a terrifying, heavy power. It rolled off him in waves. As Alistair reached the back rows, His eyes suddenly caught on someone, Clara Jenkins. Alistair paused. For the first time in 5 centuries, his quiet senses woke up. He could hear the fast, rhythmic thudding of Clara's heart. He could smell the sweet scent of her blood, vanilla, old books, and something completely unique. But more than that, he sensed her strong, protective spirit. He knew right away that this was the woman who had stood between his daughter and the wolves. Their eyes locked. Clara could not breathe. The man looking at her was impossibly handsome, but his eyes held a danger so deep it made her knees weak. Yet under the danger there was a flash of deep, surprising gratitude aimed only at her. Alistair offered Clara the smallest of nods. Then his gaze snapped forward to the stage. The gratitude disappeared, replaced by pure, killing intent. "I am Alistair Covington," his voice rang out. He was not using a microphone, yet his deep, rich voice filled the whole huge hall and vibrated in everyone's bones. "And I understand there seems to be a misunderstanding about my daughter." Silence, absolute and choking, seized the grand auditorium. Nobody dared to breathe. The city's richest power brokers, company bosses, hedge fund managers, and politicians found themselves completely frozen by the overwhelming presence of Alistair Covington. He did not need to wave a weapon or raise his voice. His power was an invisible, crushing weight in the room. It woke a deep animal instinct buried in the human brain. Do not run. It will chase you. Alistair walked up the few carpeted stairs to the stage. His silver eyes stayed locked on the small, shaking figure on the stool. Headmistress Victoria Gable, her perfectly powdered face now white with fear, stepped forward, trying to save her broken authority. "Mr. Covington, you cannot simply burst into a private gala." Alistair did not even look at her. He kept walking until he stood directly in front of his daughter. Lily looked up, her brown eyes filled with fresh tears. But these were no longer tears of fear or shame. "Papa," she whispered, her voice cracking. The terrifying, monstrous aura coming from Alistair instantly melted away. It was replaced by a tenderness so deep it made the watchers' chests ache. He knelt, ruining the perfect crease of his expensive trousers, and carefully cupped her tear-stained face in his pale, cold hands. "I am here, little bird," he murmured softly. He shrugged off his midnight black suit jacket and draped it over her trembling shoulders. The jacket was huge on her, but it was a shield. "You have been incredibly brave. Now let your father handle the rest." Alistair stood slowly and turned to face Headmistress Gable. As he turned, the temperature in the room dropped again. Frost formed on the edges of the microphone stand. "You asked for my presence, Victoria," Alistair said smoothly, his voice a dark velvet purr. "I must apologize for being late. I was busy finishing a real estate deal." Gable swallowed hard and took an involuntary step back. "A real estate deal? Covington? This is about your daughter's academic dishonesty. We have zero tolerance for theft." "Oh, I am well aware of what you tolerate," Alistair interrupted, taking one deliberate step toward her. "You tolerate cruelty. You tolerate the slow breaking of a child's spirit just to please the fragile egos of your donors. And speaking of donors," Alistair's piercing gaze swept the front row and landed directly on Mayor Davies, who suddenly looked like he wanted the marble floor to swallow him whole. Alistair snapped his fingers. From the shattered doorway at the back of the auditorium, a sharply dressed man with equally pale skin and a leather briefcase walked silently down the center aisle. He moved with the same unnatural grace as Alistair, completely ignoring the horrified stares of the rich crowd. He approached the stage, handed the briefcase to his king, bowed deeply, and retreated into the shadows. Alistair opened the brass latches of the briefcase. He pulled out a thick stack of shiny financial papers and a small USB drive. "Let us discuss theft," Alistair announced, holding up the papers. "Richard Harrison." Harrison, standing stiff near the stage, flinched as his name was called. The arrogant smirk was gone, replaced by a sheen of cold sweat on his forehead. I found the answer key in her locker. That is a fact. Did you? Alistair stepped to the edge of the stage, towering over the history teacher. Because my helpers, who are extremely thorough, spent the last 30 minutes getting the security footage from the hallway outside the girls' locker room. It is fascinating how the cameras had a brief glitch during your free period, Richard. But even more fascinating is the offshore bank account number I found buried in your emails. Alistair tossed a few sheets of paper down at Harrison's feet. 3 deposits of $25,000, Alistair declared, his voice echoing off the high ceiling. Wired directly from a shell company registered to our esteemed Mayor Davies. A very generous gift, simply to make sure his son, whose brain is about as sharp as a damp sponge, kept a perfect grade point average. The auditorium erupted in shocked gasps. Mayor Davies jumped up from his seat, his face purple. This is slander. I demand you leave this place at once, Covington. You have no authority here. Alistair smiled. It was not a warm expression. It was the smile of a wolf, showing its fangs. Actually, Mayor, I do, Alistair replied softly, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a sleek black folder. As I mentioned, I was delayed by a real estate transaction. St. Jude's has been quietly struggling with a huge money shortage, relying heavily on loans to keep up this fake show of grandeur. 30 minutes ago, my holding company bought every single cent of that debt. I also bought the land under this building. He dropped the black folder onto the podium. I own St. Jude's Preparatory Academy, Alistair stated, his voice ringing with total finality. Every brick, every desk, and every contract. Which means, Victoria, I am officially your boss. Gable's mouth opened and closed, like a fish that could not breathe. You can't! I just did. Alistair stepped right into her personal space. His silver eyes flared with an unnatural, terrifying light that made Gable whimper. You dared to humiliate my daughter. You let a corrupt, pathetic man frame her to cover up his own sins. You thought, because I do not come to your boring little parties, I did not care. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that only Gable and Lily could hear. I have killed entire armies for looking at her the wrong way. You are merely a pest I am choosing not to crush. Alistair straightened up and projected his voice to the stunned crowd. Victoria Gable, you are fired, effective immediately. Your pension is gone. You have exactly 5 minutes to leave my property before my security takes you out in handcuffs for helping with extortion. Gable let out a choked sob, turned, and fled off the stage. Her high heels echoed frantically as she ran down the side aisle toward the exit. Alistair looked down at Harrison, who was practically shaking with terror. As for you, Richard, the evidence of your bribery and framing of a minor has already been sent to the Manhattan District Attorney. I suggest you find a very good lawyer. Leave my sight. Harrison did not hesitate. He scrambled backward, nearly tripping over a chair, before sprinting out of the auditorium. Chaos rippled through the seated parents, but one sharp look from Alistair silenced them instantly. St. Jude's will undergo a complete change, Alistair addressed the terrified rich people. This school will no longer cater to your fragile egos or accept your bribes. Excellence will be earned, not bought. Anyone who has a problem with this new management is welcome to take their children out tomorrow. Alistair turned his back on the wealthiest people in New York, dismissing them completely. He walked back to Lily and held out his hand. She took it and slid off the stool. A huge, bright smile broke across her face. For the first time in years, she held her head high in this building. Let us go home, my little bird, Alistair said, leading her down the stairs. As they reached the center aisle, the crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. But Alistair did not head straight for the shattered double doors. Instead, he stopped halfway down the aisle. His eyes locked onto the figure standing near the back wall, Clara Jenkins. Clara froze as the terrifying, impossibly handsome billionaire approached her. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had just watched a man tear apart the city's corrupt elite in 5 minutes without breaking a sweat. Alistair stopped a few feet from her. Up close, his beauty was overwhelming. He had a raw magnetic pull that left Clara feeling lightheaded. "Clara Jenkins," Alistair said softly. "Yes," she managed to squeak out, clutching her purse. Lily tugged on Alistair's arm. "Papa, Miss Jenkins was the only one who defended me. She stood up to Mr. Harrison and the headmistress. She lost her job because of me." Alistair's expression softened as he looked at Clara. The cold, predatory edge in his silver eyes melted into deep respect. "I am aware of what you did," Alistair said, his voice dropping to a tone that sent a shiver straight down Clara's spine. "In a den of snakes, you were the only one with a backbone. You protected what is mine. For that you have my eternal gratitude." Clara swallowed, trying to find her professional voice. "Lily is an exceptional student. She didn't deserve any of this. I just did what any teacher should do." "Perhaps," Alistair mused, stepping half an inch closer. The scent of him, like fresh snow, cedar, and an underlying spark of ozone, washed over her. "But it is rare to find such fierce honesty. As I just mentioned, St. Jude's needs new leadership. The position of headmistress is empty." Clara's amber eyes went wide. "Headmistress? Mr. Covington, I'm 28. I don't have the management background for—" "You have the moral background," Alistair interrupted gently. "And you have my support. My resources are endless. You will run this academy exactly as you see fit. You will set the lessons, hire the staff, and I will make sure nobody ever questions your authority." He held out a sleek black business card with a single silver crest on it. "Call my office tomorrow," Alistair said, his gaze locked onto hers with an intensity that made Clara's breath catch. "We have much to discuss, not just about the school, but about Lily's future. I believe she could use a permanent mentor, and I believe I need to be far more involved." Clara slowly reached out. Her fingers brushed against his as she took the card. His skin was unnaturally cool, but the contact sent a jolt of electricity racing up her arm. She looked up into his ancient silver eyes and recognized that under the terrifying billionaire exterior was a father who would literally burn the world down for his child. "I'll call you," Clara promised, a small smile playing on her lips. Alistair offered her a genuine, breathtaking smile in return. It was the first time he had smiled at a human other than Lily in over a century. "I look forward to it, Miss Jenkins." With a final nod, Alistair placed a protective hand on Lily's shoulder and guided her out of the auditorium, leaving a stunned, silent room of elites in his wake. Clara stood there, holding the black card against her chest. A deep sense of destiny washed over her. Life at St. Jude's was never going to be the same. And as she watched the Vampire King and his human daughter disappear into the Manhattan night, Clara had a feeling her own life was just about to begin. The terrifying display of power was not just a win for a bullied teenager. It was the start of a completely new empire. St. Jude's Preparatory Academy changed overnight from a corrupt playground for the rich into a real safe place of learning under Clara's strong leadership. As for Alistair, the immortal king finally stepped out of the shadows. He realized that protecting his daughter meant standing by her side in the light. And in Clara Jenkins, he found not only a brilliant headmistress, but a woman whose fierce protective heart managed to wake a spark in his own cold chest, proving that even a centuries-old monster can be saved by love. This story shows us that true family is not only about blood. It is about the people who stand up for you when others are cruel. Bullying is never okay, whether it comes from classmates, teachers, or people in power. Standing up for someone who is being treated unfairly takes courage, and that courage can change everything. Money and status do not make a person better or more important. Kindness, honesty, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves are the real measures of strength. Even the most powerful people can learn to open their hearts, and even the quietest person can find allies who will fight for them. Remember that every child deserves to feel safe and valued at school. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe so you don't miss my next video.